Welcome, everybody, to Weekly Quantum World Detangled. This is Season 5, Episode 1. I am joined by my friends and sponsors, Denise Ruffner from Atom Computing.
Hi, everyone. Denise Ruffner at Atom Computing, as André said, coming to you from sunny Southern California. And happy it's warm here.
We have a special guest, also from California, unless she is hiding in lockdown or COVID somewhere else. We'll learn all about her, Marina Radulaski.
Hi, everyone. Marina Radulaski from UC Davis in Northern California.
Beautiful. We're covering the West Coast and the East Coast. Very excited to have you, Marina. We also always like to start off by getting to know our guests a little bit. Some guests are kinder when I do my research than others. There's very, very little information out there on your personal kind of who you are. You are from Serbia. Maybe we can start out there a little bit, where you were born and kind of your journey. I know you had a couple internships and research stays at the Oxford, I believe, and a couple other places before you came to the US, but you've been in quantum for 15 years. And it seems that as early as 2005, you already won optics competitions and awards. So you kind of knew what you wanted very young.
Yeah, thanks for that kind introduction. Yeah, I was born in Serbia, and I was really exposed to awesome science and math programs from high school age. And then I guess as early as 2005, I won this award, international award for Step to Nobel Prize in Physics, which was awarded by Polish Academy of Sciences. So that was my first research stay abroad, where I got to work with scientists at their Institute of Physics at the Polish Academy of Sciences. And this was possible because in Serbia, we had these great programs for high school students to get engaged with research. So I worked with mentors at the Institute of Physics in Belgrade and did some really challenging science for high school. So with my advisor, Anton Balaj, I worked on path integrals in quantum mechanics. And it took me, I think, a whole year to get a grasp of what that is. But then after challenging myself from such a young age, it became easier. In college, I decided to study two undergrads. One was in theoretical physics and the other one in computer science. And I looked for opportunities to do research abroad, because Serbia is pretty great for theoretical science, but then when it comes to experimental resources, there are some limitations. So I went to Vienna to work at the Institute of Quantum Optics and Quantum Information, which was a huge influence to my whole career. That's really where a lot of this technical background started. And then I worked at Oxford University. That was also a wonderful experience on the laser side. And that, combined with a previous experience, also shaped that I wanted to look into quantum optical sciences later on. And to kind of shorten this story, after that, I worked in Berlin. And after that, I worked at a Berkeley lab. So all these internships really helped me decide to do a PhD in quantum nanophotonics, which I did at Stanford University, and postdoc as well. And now I'm at UC Davis.
You and I, we share this transatlantic upbringing and experience. And a question that comes to mind, everybody always says quantum is such a collaborative field. How do you view it? Is there a lot of collaboration between Europe and the US? Do you see that changing? What's your opinion on transatlantic quantum innovation?
Yeah, what I love about quantum science and technology is that it is so interdisciplinary. So you always need to look for people to work with, because one discipline doesn't cut it. It just, you need engineering, physics, computer science, material science, and so on. And we have really wonderful collaborations between different continents. Most recently, we had this Nature Materials collaboration paper with our colleagues in Germany, Sweden, Japan, I don't think I'm missing anyone. And clearly UC Davis.
And quantum mechanics is a very specific, narrow field. You very quickly went into optics and ultimately photonics and nanophotonics. Help us understand that. How does somebody fall in love with nanophotonics? What is that journey kind of like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess I first fell in love with the general quantum mechanical philosophy, and I looked for systems where I can do that on a tabletop, that I don't need, like a huge facility, but rather design my own experiments and have a bit more hands-on control. And nanophotonics just lends itself really well to that, because we go to the nanofabrication and make these tiny chips. It's kind of magical because you're making something you can't see with your own eyes, and then you use yet another super tool to see what you made. Then you bring it to your lasers lab, where you align, set up, and spend hours on that until you can finally see the optical signal that makes sense. And so that is really what I love about this field, in addition to clearly its prospect of building scalable systems that we can deploy commercially. But the idea that we can do it with a small team, clearly plus collaborations, and see our science on a daily basis in our lab and on our optical tables is really exciting.
Deploying commercially photonic quantum computers, that sounds a good follow-up question for a little bit later. But I still would like to get to know Marina a little bit better before we dive back into the science and your research. What else excites you when you don't think and work in photonics, about photonics? What are your hobbies and what else is important to you?
I enjoy, so for physical activities, I really like climbing, and in general, exposing myself to nature, whether it's camping or hiking or stand-up paddleboarding. Those are the kind of half meditative, half physical activities that I find really gel well with me. I like reading, and I like reading in other areas where I can complement. So after using my scientific brain all day, I like to go and read complementary materials. So from some recent books that inspire me, I would say The Argonauts was a really exciting book for me. Some philosophy books, documentaries, again, about some totally different topics. So yeah, those are some of the things that I enjoy doing outside of science.
Einstein was a big sailor like me. That's the only thing him and I have in common. I just watched Heisenberg and Bose, a great documentary this weekend, and they went for hour-long walks in the woods. Does nature inspire you as well when you think about photonics?
Yeah, I think there's just so much correspondence. I mean, what we are doing, we are probing the nature in its own, quantum ways in the lab, but then to really connect that to the rest of the experience, going for walks and seeing all the other ways that nature can express itself through trees or flowers or birds or ocean, is really wonderful. As a PhD student, I like to shoot videos of waves crashing in ways that I can later connect to superposition of waves, interference, and so on. And that's also like a little nice activity that I like to do.
And maybe a quantum NFT in the making. We'll catch up on that later. I know that Denise has more questions about your studies, your internships, and your work today. So over to Denise.
Always have to get off mute. Well, first of all, you won the Women in Quantum Leading Researcher of the Year award in December at Q2B. So congratulations. I think there were 3,500 votes in total. So it was a good crowd of people voting. So I was really happy to see you get those accolades. Maybe we could start off.
I would
Oh,
like to also acknowledge all the other women that were represented and nominated. They are really inspiring, and I follow them both scientifically as well on social media. And it's just amazing to see all these great women getting spotlight.
great. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit more about the research that you're doing in your lab at Davis? I know it's photons and quantum, and Andre touched a little bit about it, but I think it would be great for everybody to hear in a little more depth what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so we bring together both photons and the solid state to create a next generation quantum hardware. And what's great about photons is that it can travel long distance, carry entanglement, and enable both quantum internet as well as distributed quantum computing. And this is a specific property that not all systems have. So, for example, a lot of computers that we use, for example, in our teaching, are superconducting quantum computers, and they don't have this optical interface. So you really need to solve this hard problem of transduction to send information to long distances. And so the photons are really great for quantum technologies. On the other hand, we use solid-state systems such as silicon carbide and diamond. What's great about solid-state systems is what we've seen in the whole 20th century of scaling regular computers, that you can build a lot of devices on a small chip, and if you do it right, you can do it in a reproducible way. And that is something that is also really important if we're going to have quantum internet with nodes that are all operating at the same frequency with same properties. And then in addition to that, the systems that we study, color centers, have wonderful properties when it comes to spin photon entanglement. So you can have your qubit at home and entangle it with a photon and send that photon far away to someone you want to communicate with. And so these are some of the properties that we care about as we build the next generation of quantum hardware.
And how big is your group at Davis? I always feel like I'm meeting someone and they're saying, I'm working with Marina. So I find you have quite a reach.
We currently have 7 students. It's a mix of graduate and undergraduate researchers. We care both to develop experts who will study for several years in, a graduate program like master's or PhD, as well as to train undergrads to join the quantum workforce or to continue on to other graduate programs. Because as we're seeing, we need more and more people who are going to take these jobs and take the baton of building this next exciting area of quantum technologies. And so we're really proud to see where our students have gone. We have just had a student go to a national lab with the research experience from our lab, and even without the graduate degree, he was able to get offers for jobs that do require them. And so it's very exciting to see that research that is done in our lab has actual application, or rather that the skills are really needed in actual quantum jobs post-academia.
Now, one of the interesting things I noticed on your bio was that you did an internship at Hewlett-Packard. And I know you had also mentioned you did an internship in Vienna, which of course I'm very interested in. But tell us how doing internships impacted you in your career or overall.
Yeah. So by the end of my PhD, even though I was quite set on academia, it's just a really good fit to my interest and personality. I thought that if I don't do an internship, I will be missing on understanding what this whole other part of R&D looks like. And so there was a project very similar to the project I was working on in my PhD at the Hewlett-Packard Labs, which also helped me think more about scaling systems for, as we talked about, for deployment commercially. And that was a wonderful experience. I could also draw some interesting parallels and contrasts between academia and industry in terms of, working on a goal together and who is carrying the idea and so on. And found that regardless whether you end up in academia or industry, you can find exciting research projects to work on and feed your curiosity.
That's a really good point. Now, one of the questions I had is you said that right now you all are using superconducting computers. And I wanted to see kind of what you thought about NISQ technology and when we're going to get into fault tolerant and get your view of things.
Yeah, well, the hard questions. Yeah, well, I first want to start a little bit personal about this because about 10-ish years ago, a bit more than 10 years ago, when I was starting my PhD, I was very excited about quantum computers. But a lot of prominent professors were saying, we're not going to have them just yet. And then by the end of my PhD, we actually had these few options to play with. They're mostly superconducting hardware. And now, it's been 5 years since my PhD, there are so many different platforms. So the field is moving really, really fast, way faster than we thought just a decade ago. And I think that's why in a decade from now, we won't be surprised with how much we've accomplished on different types of quantum hardware. So I'm here talking not just about quantum computing, also about quantum internet and quantum sensing. Where we bet on when it comes to solid state solutions, optical solutions, are the systems that have long coherence time. And with color centers, that is, milliseconds, seconds, and maybe we can push it longer. But the point is, how many gates can you apply during that time? And so we have pretty good ratio of how long we can store quantum information versus how fast to manipulate it. And so there's a really interesting direction there. And it's a fun competition to see how it's going, because some other platforms have gates with so many nines in fidelity. And so that's working really well. But when it comes to scalability or to the path toward implementing those, say, 100,000 gates before losing coherence, there is a bit of a challenge. And so, yeah, I'm really curious to see where we get. I would definitely revisit it in 5 and 10 years and see who's winning out in this goal.
Also, one question is, there's really been a lot of startups around the quantum industry. And is that something you've ever thought of doing?
Having done a PhD at Stanford, I've been exposed to a lot of startups, and it is very exciting. I moreover encourage people around me to have their own startups. At the moment, I'm not looking to go in that direction, but I think they're so important for the whole ecosystem, and we are using hardware that comes out of these small businesses that are supported either nationally, through different national funding agencies, or with some angel investors or VCs. And so I just want to encourage the whole ecosystem to keep investing into startups, because I think they will play a really important role in making quantum technology happen.
Now, one thing over COVID, you and I were talking, and I found out that you were lucky enough to go to ETH. Can you tell us about the work that you did while you were there?
Yeah, that's also a very interesting story. It's a story. It has several aspects. One is pandemic, because it's happening during pandemic. But another one is young PIs coming together to start a new direction of their research. And so here, my colleague, Marina, who is a tenure track faculty at ETH, and myself, who is a tenure track faculty at UC Davis, had a passion to look into quantum algorithms that can solve some of the problems that we have in our fields, especially now that we have access to NISQ computers, and that these devices are going to get even more powerful each year as we see the number of qubits is scaling and so on. We wanted to start a new direction and combine our expertise, in my case, quantum technologies, in Professor Marinkovic's case, numerical methods from particle physics, and solve some of the issues that we currently have. And so I would like to invite your listeners to come to the March meeting, where we'll be presenting our new quantum algorithm, which we named Q Marina. because it's an acronym that says about a mapping of the atomic cavity systems to the NISC computers. So this is like a little intro of how we even got to the ETH collaboration. But last summer, they had a really nice program at the Pauli Center for Theoretical Studies in Zurich. And they were inviting research visitors, and I was happy to join that program and spend a month working side to side with my collaborator. And so after a year of working over Zoom and fighting the different time zones, we could really sit down and finish this project. And that's been really exciting.
Wow, that's great. One other point is I'd like to mention, if you could talk a little bit about the Davis Friday afternoon teaching that you do, just to get people aware of this as a resource, because I love it. So if you could mention that.
So this is actually UC Davis Quantum Journal Club. It's not necessarily always on Fridays. Actually, we try to keep it on Wednesdays, these quarters. We've started about 3 years ago now. This is the third year that we're doing it. The idea is quantum information science is only now getting that much interest among different fields. But not all researchers know about quantum information. So how do we bring them up to speed before they can actually start going to these conferences and really understanding what is going on? And so we bring together, I think, about 8 different departments of science and engineering. We have faculty, we have postdocs, we have PhD students, sometimes undergrads as well. And we bring speakers from academia, industry, and sometimes even government, and discuss issues, different topics. Sometimes they are technical, sometimes they're applications, and it's a safe space where everyone can ask a question. So even if you're coming to ask, what is a qubit in your system? That is welcome. Whereas at a conference, you would never raise a hand to ask such a question. So, and we see results. We already see people getting more into this field, applying for internships, winning quantum hackathons, publishing papers, writing grants together. So on all levels of interest, this is giving results.
Well, it's a fabulous resource and I love it. So it's great. And I encourage anybody that can participate to join it. André, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. And it is very rare to get the photonics folks to speak in public, at least on the startup and enterprise side. So maybe we can spend another couple of minutes on a question that I have before we get to our questionnaire. In quantum computing specifically, it seems that a lot of people think on the superconducting side especially, but also other modality, it's nothing but an engineering problem anymore, right? And we know how to get to 1,000 qubits. At 1,000 decent qubits, we'll have whatever you want to call it, quantum practicality, advantage, supremacy, and so forth. You mentioned a commercially scalable quantum computer. In photonics, people seem to think that's indeed possible, right? And some predictions say 1 million qubits in 2025, very, very soon. Photons don't have any decoherence. Obviously, you don't need cooling. Many different ways to encode quantum information. At the same time, and this is less well understood by the public, there are some challenges. And I'm thinking of things like finding reliable 3-photon entangled state sources, single photon sources, the whole control and measurement aspect of it. Can you spend a minute talking about what you think the challenges to the scalable photonic quantum computer are? And is it only an engineering problem or is it worth? Because the startups in the space are not telling us much.
Yeah, thank you. This is, again, one really big question. And also, I want to steer away from trying to minimize it to just a few problems, because there's a lot of challenges and so many different disciplines contribute. So I want to identify one that we work on really hard. We have these quantum emitters, and they have nice entanglement properties between a stationary and a flying qubit, but they interact with the environment. And the environment, in this case, are the vibrations of the lattice of this solid state chip. And so to combat that, there are several different directions, but the photonics way is to integrate these emitters with nanophotonic devices. When I say nanophotonic devices, most frequently we use photonic crystal cavities, which are very, very small optical resonators. And so here, even on this just one problem I'm defining is we have nanofabrication challenges to build really good ways of making little features in these chips. We have material science problems and making samples that have very little strain and that they use atoms that don't have nuclear background so that doesn't decohere the spin on chip. Then we have challenges in coupling this into a fiber so that it can be a part of a fiber network or internet. So even just on one challenge, I can tell you several fields that need to contribute for this to become a reality. But then from there, there are also up the stack so many additional challenges, and which is, I think, why it is hard to call out just one winner or just one key resource that we need to have to get to fault tolerance.
Definitely a fascinating topic, and the war of modalities is on. Consolidation of modalities is on, and photonics will come on the scene sooner or later. Now we are onto our rapid fire, famous Marcel Bruce, James Lipton weekly Quantum World Detangled questionnaire. Marina, your mission will be to give rapid fire answers. There is no right or wrong. Just again, trying to get to know you a little bit. So if you're ready, we'll get started with the first question.
Bring it on.
Who is your favorite scientist?
Wow. When I was younger, I would say Anton Zeilinger. These days, I'm also quite excited by Michelle Simmons.
What is the quality that you desire most in a scientist? And has it changed since you had two different answers?
Interdisciplinary communication.
What do you appreciate most about working in quantum technologies?
That it's a young field, at least in terms of applications, and that we can make whatever we want of it because it's new.
You mentioned quantum sensing and quantum communications earlier. What is your favorite, in a perfect world, quantum tech application?
Quantum repeaters.
Quantum repeaters, why?
Because they're so hard to make. You need to find a system that will work for it and then bring that system to right performance and then work with giant fibers across the whole country to make this distributed quantum network. It's a lot of aspects to make it happen.
So is your quantum dream global quantum internet, or do you have another quantum dream?
I think my quantum dream is to make really cool quantum algorithms that will solve a problem in some of the problems that I've been thinking for a while. I don't need to list them, but any of those that would feel like I've overcome my own understanding through classical methods.
What is your quantum nightmare?
Oh, my quantum nightmare. That all the people I looked up to in history, like Schrödinger and others, will turn out to be sex offenders.
Back to photonics. Imagine you wake up tomorrow to a universal quantum computer, fully fault tolerant. It's sitting in your living room. It's the only one. You're not allowed to use it, but you're allowed to give it to one person, company, entity. Who do you give it to?
That's a good one. I think I would give it to NIST. They've been working really hard in this area, and they have a lot of expertise, and they've done a lot of advocacy with the government to make quantum happen.
Very interesting, Marina. It was a pleasure to get to know you and your work a little bit, from photonics to quantum repeaters, quantum algorithms, and a little bit of big thinking there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. This was so fun.
Thank you, Denise and Atom Computing. This concludes Season 5, Episode 1 of the weekly Quantum World Detangled, and you are now detangled.